So, Clive Davis passed away on Monday at 94 years old. And by Tuesday morning, the internet was already divided. Half of y'all are calling him a legend, an icon, and saying rest in peace to the greatest ear in music history. The other half of y'all are like, oh, we got to talk about this man today, okay? And baby, I am on that side, okay? But I'm bringing receipts. Y'all know how I do. Now, before anybody comes in the comments talking about, well, you shouldn't speak ill of the dead, I need you to understand something. Speaking truth about a person's impact on other people's lives is not disrespect, it's journalism. And today, we are journalists. So grab yourself some water or a glass of wine because this is going to take a minute. What's up, everybody? It's your girl Indescribable, aka Geraldine Lake, and today is gonna be kind of messy. All right, so for the people who might not know the name, let me set the scene. Clive Davis was for about 6 decades one of the most powerful men in the entire music industry. We talking Columbia Records, Arista Records, J Records, RCA. The man ran all of it at different points. But he didn't start in music. He was a lawyer, a Harvard law-trained lawyer who stumbled into the record business and just never left. And listen, when I tell you he had an ear for talent, I mean that literally. People called him the man with the golden ears. His roster? Janis Joplin, Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, Santana, Aerosmith, Earth, Wind & Fire, Aretha Franklin, the list goes on and on, most notably Alicia Keys, Whitney Houston, Kelly Clarkson, Jennifer Hudson. I mean, he helped launch or sustain virtually every major artist from the late 1960s all the way to the 2000s. He had 5 Grammys. He was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a non-performer, which, by the way, is incredibly rare. NYU literally named a music institute after him. So yes, the man built an entire empire. But here is what they are not putting in that obituary. Because every empire has people whose bones it was built on. And today, we're gonna talk about some of those people. Let me start at the beginning, because a lot of people don't know this part of the story. And I think it matters for everything that's coming afterwards. In 1973, Clive Davis was fired. And not quietly either. He was fired from Columbia Records, the most powerful record label in the country at the time. And I mean, they literally packed a bag for him and escorted him out of the building. And then they edited him out of a CBS talent showcase film that he had hosted. White corporate America is petty. Here's what happened. Columbia sued Davis for $94,000 in company funds that were allegedly used for personal expenses. We talking apartment renovations, Beverly Hills summer home rentals, and most famously, a lavish bar mitzvah for his son, billed to the company. Sir, you threw your son a bar mitzvah on the label's dime and you thought nobody was gonna notice? The audacity of a man who had never been told no a day in his life. But wait, it gets crazier than that, because this was not just about expense reports. Federal investigators were also looking into whether drugs, specifically cocaine, were being used as payola to get songs played on black radio stations. Cash payments to DJs and music directors, fake companies set up on paper to funnel money, an operation that, according to Rolling Stone reporting from 1973, involved $250,000 worth of payola in a single year. Now, to be very clear, because we keep receipts over here, Clive Davis was never criminally charged for payola. In 1975, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of failing to pay taxes on $8,800 in vacation expenses and paid a $10,000 fine. But here's the thing that stuck with me. His former vice president, David Winshaw, the man who was fired alongside him, said in a 2000 interview, and I quote, "Everyone knows I took the fall for Davis. Everyone knows I took the fall." Now, I'm not saying Davis was guilty of everything he was accused of, but what I am saying is that a man of his power and influence rarely builds that kind of empire playing entirely by the rules. And the way he bounced back, he started Arista Records, literally the next year. By 1983, he had Whitney Houston. So within a decade, he was more powerful than he had ever been. Okay, now I need you all to sit with me on this one, because this is the story that keeps coming up every single time Clive Davis's name gets mentioned. And most people under a certain age don't even know it. Her name was Phyllis Hyman. If you don't know Phyllis Hyman, I need you to stop this video right now. Go listen to Living All Alone. Come back here, and then we can talk about it. I'll wait. Okay, good. So Phyllis Hyman was a singer from Philadelphia. Stunning woman, okay? 6 feet tall, voice like warm honey and heartbreak mixed together. She was singing jingles for Burger King and performing in nightclubs that people were lined up around the block just to get into. This woman had the it factor. In 1978, her original label got acquired by Arista, which meant Phyllis now worked for Clive Davis. At first, things were fine. Davis signed her, believed in her, got her working with some producers, and she had a top 15 R&B hit. Things were looking up. But Davis had a vision, and his vision was pop crossover, mainstream, radio friendly. So think Barry Manilow, but with the black woman's voice attached. That's crazy. And Phyllis Hyman said no. She had her own vision for her career. She was an artist, a real one, not just a product. And she was not interested in being reshaped into something that she was not just because Clive Davis thought it would sell more units. So what did he do? He stopped promoting her albums. He pulled back resources. He shifted his attention to other artists, essentially put her on a shelf while she was still under contract, which means she couldn't sign anywhere else either. And then in 1984, he signed a 19-year-old girl from New Jersey, Whitney Houston. Now, I'm not saying Whitney did anything wrong. Whitney was truly a gift from God, and we will always protect her name. But what people have been saying for decades is that Whitney was being shaped into the vision that Clive had originally tried to impose on Phyllis. Same mold, new face. Phyllis was dropped from Arista the same year Whitney was signed. And here's what really makes it hit differently than just she got dropped, okay? In her own words in an interview before her death, Phyllis Hyman said, "Clive Davis taught me to never be afraid because I was terrorized by him." Terrorized is not a word you use lightly. That's not creative differences or we disagreed on the direction. That is terrorized, okay? She went on to say that if his plan was to destroy her career, it did not work. She signed with Philadelphia International Records in 1986. She released Living All Alone, which is still one of the most beloved R&B albums of that entire decade. She got a Tony nomination for her Broadway work in Sophisticated Ladies, and she fought back. But she also fought demons. Bipolar disorder, addiction, a music industry that had chewed her up and spit her out at a critical moment in her career. Phyllis Hyman died on June 30th, 1995, and she was 45 years old. And when you look at the timeline, the sabotage, the drop contract, the years of being denied the mainstream moment she deserved, and then you look at how she left this world, the industry does not just take your hits. Sometimes it takes something a little deeper than that. All right, now let's talk about my girl Whitney. Now, I want to be careful here because Whitney Houston's story has been twisted and distorted and turned into conspiracy content for years, and I simply refuse to add to that. What I'm going to tell you is what's documented and what is confirmed and what people who were in the room have said on record. Clive Davis signed Whitney Houston in 1983 when she was just 19 years old. He heard her perform at a nightclub with her mother, Sissy, and from that moment, he became arguably the most important professional relationship of her entire life. 7 consecutive #1 singles, record-setting sales, one of the best-selling artists in all of music history. That's real. That's undeniable. But here's where it gets a little complicated. By Davis's own admission, he did not recognize the depths of Whitney's addiction for years. He said she was always on when she was with him, always prepared. And look, I almost believed that, okay, until I thought about what that actually means. Whitney Houston's addiction was one of the most public deteriorations in the history of entertainment, okay? There were interviews, there were performances, there were paparazzi photos. And the man who was, by his own description, her mentor, her confidant, her closest industry relationship, said he didn't see it. Clive, baby, the entire world saw it, okay, in 4K. Now, to be fair to the facts, when he finally did acknowledge it, he wrote her a letter. He told her directly it was a matter of life or death. And that was around 2001, after her appearance at the Michael Jackson 30th anniversary concert at Madison Square Garden, where she walked out looking, in his own words, like a skeleton. But then, and this is the part that I keep coming back to, February 11th, 2012, Whitney Houston was found dead in Suite 434 of the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Los Angeles. She had drowned in the bathtub. She was 48 years old. Just 3 floors down, Clive Davis's annual pre-Grammy party was scheduled to begin, and he did not cancel it. Her body was still in the building. Police were conducting an investigation 4 floors above. Her daughter, Bobby Christina, was outside the hallway trying to get into her mother's room. And Clive hosted a party. He rebranded it as a tribute. He got on stage and he said Whitney would have wanted the music to go on. And one industry insider with knowledge of the situation said, and I quote, "Even if Whitney had given her blessing, her body was lying in a room upstairs dead. It simply was in bad taste, period. They could have had a prayer and sent everybody home." Now, I'm going to give him grace on one thing only, okay? Some celebrities who were already en route to the hotel chose to still attend. Taylor Swift chose not to. Sharon Osbourne chose not to. Brandy and Monica, who were both supposed to perform that night, pulled out of their performance and just sat in the audience instead. People made different choices. But the choice to continue at all when the woman who arguably made you the household name that you had become was dead 4 floors above you, that tells you something about where she ranked as a person, not as a product. Okay, I need to take a breath here because this last segment, I ain't gonna lie, had me in my feelings. So let's talk about Kelly Clarkson, because this one is just a little different. Kelly is alive and well. She has her own talk show and she is doing amazing. But Kelly Clarkson came out of her own mouth about Clive Davis in ways that most people in this industry do not have the courage to do. So here's the background. Kelly wins American Idol in 2002. She gets signed to RCA Records, where Clive Davis is running things. She has massive hits. Miss Independent, Since You've Been Gone, Behind These Hazel Eyes. She is one of the biggest pop stars of the 2000s. But behind the scenes, Clive Davis had a particular idea of what Kelly Clarkson should be. And Kelly Clarkson had a particular idea of what Kelly Clarkson should be. And those two ideas simply did not match. It started with Because of You, a deeply personal song that Kelly had written about her own life and her parents' divorce. She played it for Davis. And this man, this legend, this Hall of Famer, this Grammy winner, looked at a young woman who had poured her heart out in a song and told her, in her own words, verbatim, that she was, and I quote, a shitty writer who should be grateful for the gifts that he bestows upon me. The gifts that he bestows. Like he's some kind of king distributing out blessings to peasants. Kelly, baby, run. Okay. He also told her that the song didn't rhyme and that she should just shut up and sing. Because of You became a worldwide hit. Multiple Grammy nominations. One of the most powerful songs of her entire career. I just want to make sure everybody heard that. Okay. The man who told her to shut up and sing about a song that did not rhyme was totally wrong about the rhyming and the shutting up. But then came My December in 2007, and Kelly wanted to make a more personal rock-influenced album. Davis reportedly offered her $10 million to remove 5 songs and replace them with more commercial material. Kelly said no. And when he could not buy her compliance, Kelly said, he stood up in front of his company at a convention and belittled me and my music and completely sabotaged the entire project. It never had a chance to reach its full potential. My December went platinum. The only single they released in the US was a top 10 hit. And when Davis released his memoir in 2013, of course, he wrote his version of these events a little differently, including claiming Kelly burst into hysterical sobbing in his office. Kelly went public with a full statement. She said, and I quote, I refuse to be bullied. Growing up is awesome because you learn you don't have to cower to anyone, not even Clive Davis. That is a woman who did the work on herself, because it took guts to say that about a man who at that point still controlled a significant portion of the entire music industry. Okay, now we got to talk about TLC because this might be the craziest chapter in the whole story. Crazy Sexy Cool came out in 1994. It sold over 12 million copies. It produced hits like Waterfalls, Creep, and Red Light Special. It was one of the best-selling albums of the entire decade. But TLC filed for bankruptcy just 1 year later. Let me say that again. The group behind one of the biggest selling albums of the 90s filed for bankruptcy while that album was still actively charting. How? Because their contract made everything recoupable. And I mean everything. Music videos, travel, hotels, food, styling. All of it counted as a loan from the label that had to be paid back before the artist saw a single dollar in royalties. T-Boz confirmed on record that the Crazy Sexy Cool album generated $75 million. And the 3 members of TLC were paid $50,000 each on a $75 million album. I have made more money from Facebook in half a year. Okay? Now, TLC was technically signed to LaFace Records, which was distributed by Arista Records. LaFace was run by L.A. Reid and Babyface, not directly Clive Davis. So some people use that to give Davis a pass. But LaFace was an Arista subsidiary. Davis was the head of Arista, and he knew what was in those contracts. And he did nothing. What did happen is that TLC eventually said enough. They physically went to Arista Records, walked into the building, stormed all the way up to Clive Davis's office, where, according to T-Boz, they found Diddy sitting there playing music like it was just a regular Tuesday. Now, Diddy was just there, hanging out. In retrospect, that detail is not funny at all, but the image of TLC bursting in and Diddy being like, oh, hey, that is something to think about. The situation got tense enough that someone in the building called the police. The officers showed up and laughed because 3 young black women had effectively shut down one of the most powerful record labels in the country over being robbed. Now, they eventually got a new contract with better terms, and they moved on. But Lisa Left Eye Lopez died in a car accident in 2002. T-Boz has battled sickle cell disease her entire life, and all 3 of them spent the prime years of their career building someone else's empire without being properly compensated for it. There's a TLC musical opening this month, actually, June 26th in Washington, D.C. And I think about how that story is going to be told now. Because the man who ran the label they had to fight against is gone. And the receipts are still here. Okay, I know I've given you a lot of information and I want to bring it together because I think there is something here that is a lot more important than any single storyline. The pattern is this. Clive Davis had a gift, a real, genuine, undeniable gift for identifying talent. Nobody's disputing that. Aretha Franklin said he was the greatest record man of all time. Bruce Springsteen said he changed his life. That's real. That's facts. But his gift came with conditions. And those conditions were, I see you, I'll build you up, I'll make you a star. But in exchange, you got to do it my way. The moment an artist pushed back, asserted creative control, or simply refused to be the product he envisioned, the support disappeared. The promotion disappeared, and often a replacement showed up shortly after. Phyllis Hyman said no, Whitney Houston got signed, and Phyllis Hyman got dropped. Kelly Clarkson said, this is my art and I will not change it. Davis allegedly sabotaged the entire project at his own company convention. TLC said, where's our money? They had to physically occupy an office to be heard. And in every case, the power dynamic was the same. He held the contract. He held the platform. He held access to radio, to promotion, the machine that turns a talented person into a household name. And artists, particularly Black women, had to decide whether to surrender their vision or risk being pushed out entirely. That's not just a Clive Davis story. That's the music industry story. That's the story of what happens when gatekeepers have too much unchecked power and artists have too few rights. But I think we have to name it specifically today because we just watched an entire news cycle idolize this man without a single mention of Phyllis Hyman's name, without a single mention of what Kelly Clarkson said in public about being bullied by him, without a single mention of TLC filing for bankruptcy after producing a $75 million album. And that erasure, that's also part of that machine. So here's how I actually feel about Clive Davis, okay? Two things can be true. He was genuinely one of the most talented A&R minds in the history of recorded music. That's facts. He also used his power in ways that damaged people, documented ways that those people spoke about in their own voices before they were gone. And in some cases, while they're still here. Both of those things are his legacy, and I think we do a disservice to everyone, including him, when we only tell half the story. Phyllis Hyman deserved better. Whitney Houston deserved a mentor who cared more about her survival than his Grammy party. Kelly Clarkson deserved to be told she was talented instead of being told to shut up and sing. And TLC definitely deserved to get that money. Okay? They gave the world something beautiful. A system upheld by men like Clive Davis made sure they paid full price for the privilege of giving it. Now, if this video made you think, share it with somebody. If it made you go look up Phyllis Hyman's discography, even better, okay? Because that woman's catalog deserves all the streams it can get. Now, I want y'all to remember something. Tomorrow is not promised. Go to hell today, okay? Now, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know every single time your girl uploads, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.